Well, here we go. Day 25 of 30 days of Lerxst, aka Alex Lifeson month here on my channel. And today, on day 25, we're going all the way back to 1975's Caress of Steel album and the solo to Bastille Day, the album opener. Now, I may have spoken about this before, but not during this series of videos, I don't think. So I'm going to revisit this topic again in this video, briefly, or maybe not so briefly, we'll see. That topic being the album Caress of Steel. We Rush fans look back with fond memories of Caress of Steel, and it's often cited as one of Rush's most underrated albums from their entire catalog. However, at the time, it nearly broke the band and put them on the verge of losing their record contract with Mercury Records. Rush at this point in early 75 were riding pretty high with 2 albums under their belt, a couple of rock hits, and growing popularity within Canada and the US. The future of the band was looking rather bright, to say the least. And then came the musical shift that was Caress of Steel. A shift away from the earlier straight-ahead Zeppelin-inspired blues-based hard rock sound to one that was a heck of a lot more progressive. A band, I suppose, in the process of finding and forging their own particular style and sound. Unfortunately, mainstream audiences and many fans of the first 2 albums pretty much hated Caress of Steel. Sales of the album were dismal upon its release, and all of a sudden things were not looking so rosy for Rush with this new musical direction that they seemed intent on pursuing. So what to do if you're Rush at this point? Go backwards, simplify the music again to the band's previous sound with shorter, more straightforward fare, or gamble it all on this new direction that the band seemed like they wanted to forge ahead with. Rush, of course, decided to gamble, and gamble in a big way, considering that their popularity, existence as a band, and their record contract was pretty much on the line with Caress of Steel's follow-up album. They, of course, would plow ahead with this new progressive hard rock sound. And in the process, make the songs even longer and even more complicated than those on Caress of Steel, and gamble pretty much the whole stack of chips on that album's follow-up, 2112. And to use another poker analogy, they were pretty much all in at this point. This time, of course, the gods of rock and roll smiled down upon Rush, and suddenly what wasn't de rigueur in 1975, that being long progressive rock tracks, was all of a sudden something that everyone everywhere wanted to listen to, especially if it was this good. 2112 would of course go on to become an album that, were it not included, would render any hard rock record collection incomplete in the mid to late 70s. And the rest, as they say, is history, but know that it all had its genesis on Caress of Steel. And without Caress of Steel and the band's resolve to pursue this exciting new direction that the band were heading in, there would be no 2112. Good then, on to the solo from Bastille Day. Now, like the music itself that was becoming more progressive on Caress of Steel, so was Alex's guitar playing, and soloing style for that matter. You see, on the previous 2 albums, Alex had, for the most part, stuck to the tried and true pentatonic scale and the minor scale for his soloing, much like his hero Jimmy Page. The majority of Alex's solos on the first 2 albums were pretty much blues rock type solos, as was all the rage in the early and mid 70s, of course. Now, I'm not 100% certain of this because I haven't gone back and learned every solo from the first 2 albums yet, but I believe that this solo from Bastille Day is Alex's first dip into what I like to call his secret soloing weapon, the Mixolydian. Now, the Mixolydian is a scale mode, jazzy, bluesy type scale mode, popular with the likes of Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead, Duane Allman, Dickie Betts of the Allman Brothers Band, Joe Perry of Aerosmith, those kind of players, However, the Mixolydian at the time was not a scale that a whole lot of hard rockers or early metal guitar players were using very often, if at all. Now, the track Bastille Day is very much a hard rock, early proto-metal type of track. And if not metal, it's certainly much closer to that genre than, say, blues or blues rock. Yet Alex jammed this fantastic Mixolydian solo right into the middle of it and makes it work beautifully. Gives the solo its really unique and off-kilter flavor that it has. Obviously, Alex is growing here as a guitar player and finding new ways to express his ideas, and in the process separate himself from many of his contemporaries at the time, but especially his main influence, Jimmy Page, who he sounded remarkably similar to on the first couple of Rush albums. On Caress of Steel, Alex was finally starting to sound like nobody else but Alex Lifeson. His own style was coming to the fore on that album, and the Jimmy Page comparisons were starting to subside to some degree. And with the release of 2112 a year later, they pretty much stopped altogether. Alex as a guitar force had arrived, and he himself had become a guitarist to learn from and emulate in his own right for many budding guitarists during the latter half of the 70s and beyond. Myself included, of course. Well, there you have it, day 25 of Alex Lifeson month in the books. I certainly hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please hit that like button. Drop me a subscribe if you haven't done that already, as that would be awfully nice. Hope you're well out there in your little guitar corner of the world, wherever that may find you, and we will see you next time. Cheers.